Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing all right. Hope you're keeping safe. Hope you're keeping sane. Wasn't planning to make this video today, but sometimes when your brain goes off on a little bit of a tangent, and I almost started sort of vocalizing in my head this thought as if I was actually making a video. So I thought, well, if this is worthy of my own headspace, then it might be worth putting it down and letting other people digest it, and maybe it might help someone who's been in the positions that I have found myself in historically. So what I want to talk about today is what I think is possibly the worst attempted fix for a gambling addiction. And in essence, what I'm talking about is buying your way out of this addiction. There is a quite rational, but I believe misguided idea that a gambling addiction is fundamentally a financial problem. That money can fix this problem that we have. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certainly financial problems that occur as symptoms of a gambling addiction. There are a multitude of other problems, of course, but the most obvious one, certainly to someone who is looking from the outside in, most people assume that the biggest fallout, the biggest problem caused by a gambling addiction will be a financial one. And, like I say, that's quite a rational belief. So what you may be led to believe is that if you are able to fix your financial situation, this symptom of a gambling addiction, then this will give you a very, very solid starting off point for some form of ongoing recovery. And certainly historically, I have believed this myself. I have, quite openly admitted previously that I managed to run up quite a substantial amount of personal debt throughout my gambling life. And the vast majority of this, while some of it may have gone on other things, the vast majority of this would have been at least indirectly related to my gambling. So, in the past, I have considered the idea that if I was to consolidate this debt or find some way to pay it off in a timely fashion, by that I mean beg, steal and borrow, then that would give me a very, very solid basis of recovery. Now, there is, of course, some logic to this. The gambler's brain, for some reason, convinces us that the way out of the problem that we are in is by continuing to undertake the very same activity that got us into this situation in the first place. I.e., gambling got me into this problem, but I just need that one big win, and it can get me out of the situation that I'm in. Now, of course, this is potentially possible, but the chances are, as we know, incredibly slim. And in all likelihood, all that's going to happen is you're going to find yourself digging a bigger and bigger hole for you to somehow get yourself out of, or at least hopefully get yourself out of in the future. So here was my thought, and this is what got me off on this sort of mental tangent, so to speak. Say, at my worst, I owed £50,000. Now, I don't know whether that's the case, but it certainly doesn't sound like a massively unreasonable figure. If someone was to come to me and offer me £50,000, I could pay off all my debt, and then I'm at parity, and there'd be no motivation to gamble. I wouldn't need to try and win any money to pay anything back, and I could start my life afresh. That is the dream. That is what we would convince ourselves would happen. But what would really happen? Well, I know from personal experience that as soon as that money hit my bank account, the £50,000, which maybe was donated to me by some incredibly generous relative who understood my problem and really wanted to help me out. Just supposing that was the case, it wasn't, by the way, but just supposing that was the case, would I, A, take that £50,000, call up all my creditors the very same day, pay them back all the money I owed them, and then sit back and relax, knowing full well that the financial impact of my ongoing gambling addiction had been resolved? No. I would, with the best of intentions, think, well, what I'll do is I'll pay off a substantial amount of my debt. But what I'll do, because I'm so used to being skint and not having a safety net, I'll keep a little bit aside, and that way I'll have a safety net in the future should I, by natural causes, run a little bit short from month to month. I need a little bit of extra cash. Maybe my car will break down. Maybe the boiler will explode. I'll need a bit of money on the back burner for emergencies. Now, we know that money is not going to be used for emergencies. What we also know is the little bit we're going to keep aside will slowly escalate. We won't be calling up those creditors immediately. We will be slowly eating into this sudden and unexpected and probably delighted windfall. We'll be eating into it bit by bit by bit in order to continue to fund and further perpetuate our addiction until eventually that money's gone. We're in no better financial situation, and we have burnt yet another bridge. We have used up yet another one of our potential lifelines. Okay, so what's the alternative? Maybe someone gives us £100,000 to pay off our £50,000 debt and put us in a good standing. Maybe this would come from inheritance or something like this. What would happen? Well, we'd like to think we'd pay off the £50,000 and live off the other 50. And maybe in this instance we would do this because we can see the benefit of the money coming in, and we can also see the benefit of living a debt-free life and making reparations to our former selves. But then we've got £50,000, which is a huge catalyst to continue to perpetuate our gambling addiction to possibly higher and higher heights than we've ever experienced previously. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody would act in this way. However, I know, retrospectively and knowing myself, that this is more than likely the way in which I would react and I would respond to either earned, deserved, or maybe a windfall that we don't necessarily want to receive, such as an inheritance. And dare I say that this is one of the reasons why I decided that I had to quit gambling. Now, I often get emotional when talking about grief and about mortality. However, I am very aware that at some point in my life I am likely, God willing not for many years, to come into a substantial amount of money. Substantial in my terms, not substantial in sort of true terms. I'll never be a millionaire. But what I didn't want to do was put myself into that situation where I suddenly had a vast amount of money that was unaccounted for, unearned, and to an extent not required to maintain my lifestyle, and then do the person who had left me that money a massive, massive injustice by squandering all of their lifetime's hard work on this gross addiction. And this is why I don't believe that gambling is a financial problem. Sure, it causes financial problems, but you cannot buy your way out of a gambling addiction. Any attempt to use money to buy your way out of a gambling addiction is liable to land you in a much bigger hole than the one you started off in. I had this conversation many years ago, and I probably have mentioned in a previous video, with a friend of mine who was also a gambler at the time. And at the time, whilst I wasn't earning substantial money, I was on a higher wage than he was. And he used to say, well, it's all right for you. It's all right for you because you earn X, Y, Z. And often he would reference people who did earn substantial money, celebrities, footballers, whatever, and say, well, I'm sure it's not a problem for them because they can afford to do it. And we know from the news and from documentaries and videos here on YouTube, Paul Merson springs to mind, that it doesn't matter how much you earn, gambling has an ability to take everything. So if we attempt to deal with the financial fallout and the financial repercussions of our gambling addiction before addressing the root causes of it and actually taking measures in order to sustain an ongoing recovery, then the chances are we are actually liable to make the situation we are in significantly worse. We're liable to burn further bridges, cause further stress and strain on possibly already frayed relationships with friends and family, and indeed not get to the root cause of why we're doing what we're doing. Just wanted to share that thought with you guys today. I hope that's remotely interesting. Sorry it's a bit sort of croaky and monotone, a little bit under the weather at the moment, but like I say, I was having that dialogue in my head and thought, well, what I'll do is I'll switch the camera on and have a chat with you guys about it. Let me know what you think. Just on a slightly different note, although I probably should have said this at the front end of the video because a lot of people don't see these last bits. I was chatting to my wife last night and saying, look, I'm trying to get back onto YouTube. I miss talking to these guys and girls, although the analytics would say mostly guys. And I miss talking to these guys. I liked, selfishly, I liked getting the message saying I was helping people. But also selflessly, it's nice to know that I'm helping people. So I guess you could call that a win-win. But anyway, I digress. I was chatting to my wife and I was saying, well, I wanted to make these videos, but I feel like I've spoken about everything. I don't know what else to talk about. I could go off on tangents and talk about other things, non-gambling. I have this idea of having guests. It's almost like a podcast kind of format where I can talk to people about their gambling journeys. Certainly, that's something I do want to do. But I did say to her, I said, I don't know what to talk about. And she said, well, what? Just ask. Why not just ask the people who watch your videos what they might be interested in you making a video about? And so there you go. I'll open the floor to you guys. Let me know in the comments, what would you like me to talk about with regards gambling? Maybe if it's not regards gambling, if it's something you think might be sort of beneficial on a sort of motivational or a life basis. Oh, that's a terrible use of the English language, but I hope you get what I mean. But I'll leave that with you guys. And like I say, maybe I'll mention this again at the front end of my next video, because a lot of people, quite rightly, don't get to the end of my videos because I do tend to ramble. So I will, on that note, leave you at that. Stay safe, stay sane. Speak to you all soon. And if I don't speak to you again beforehand, have a good weekend. All the best.